Picture a classroom, January 30th, 1962. Three teenage girls start laughing. Not the giggly kind, the kind that doesn't stop. Nothing funny has happened. No joke, no teacher tripping over a desk, nothing. And by lunchtime, that laugh has spread through the entire school. So here's what I want you to guess before we go any further. How long do you think it would take you to catch a laugh that isn't yours? Drop your guess below, because what happened next in a small village called Kashasha near Lake Victoria in what's now Tanzania is one of the strangest documented outbreaks in modern history, and it lasted 6 months. The school was a mission-run boarding school for girls, ages 12 to 18, 159 students total. Within weeks, 95 of them were laughing uncontrollably. Some for a few hours, some for 16 straight days. Teachers tried the usual tricks: stern looks, detention, the classic settle down girls. None of it worked, because this wasn't defiance. Nobody could explain it, least of all the girls doing it. Here's where it stops being funny. The laughing came in waves, mixed with crying and restlessness. Some kids ran without direction. A few turned violent. Doctors checked their pupils and found them dilated, their reflexes wildly exaggerated. No fever though, and that's the detail that stumped everyone. Two physicians, A.M. Rankin and P.J. Phillip, were brought in to investigate, and they ran everything 1960s medicine could throw at it. Blood work, food analysis, even spinal taps. Every single test came back clean. Whatever was making these girls laugh themselves sick, it wasn't a virus, and it wasn't in the food. So the school did what any panicked institution does. It shut down. March 18th, 1962. Doors closed, girls sent home. Problem solved, right? Wrong. Turns out sending home 159 teenagers carrying an unexplained, contagious laugh is basically the opposite of quarantine. The laughing followed them. It surfaced 55 miles away in a village called Nshamba, and by April it had spread to 217 people who had never even set foot in that classroom. History doesn't record the names of the original 3 girls. Being patient zero for a laughing epidemic apparently isn't the kind of fame anyone wants credit for. Things got messy enough that the Kashasha school itself was eventually sued by parents in the surrounding villages for effectively shipping the outbreak home along with everyone's daughters. Imagine trying to explain that lawsuit to an insurance adjuster. My client contracted uncontrollable laughter from your institution. But that's the loop I want you sitting with. If it isn't a virus, and it isn't food poisoning, what exactly were 200 people catching from each other? Because something clearly spread. It had an origin point. It had carriers. It moved through a population the way an outbreak does. It just wasn't biological. Decades later, researcher Christian Hempelman from Texas A&M University took a fresh look at the case. His conclusion? This was mass psychogenic illness, sometimes called mass sociogenic illness. Extreme stress with nowhere else to go, expressing itself through the body instead of words. Which honestly tracks. Imagine being a teenage girl at a strict colonial-style mission school in early 1962. Exams you can't fail, rules you can't question, and, small detail, your entire country had become independent from British rule on December 9th, 1961, about 7 weeks before the laughing started. Nothing says settle down and focus on your studies quite like your whole nation rewriting its identity overnight. Hempelman's research points to a pattern that keeps showing up in cases like this. It tends to hit people who feel powerless, young more than old, female more than male, the ones with no real say over their own circumstances. The body finds a way to say something is wrong here when the words aren't allowed out any other way. And laughter, strangely enough, is one of the more common symptoms doctors document in these outbreaks, right alongside fainting, shaking, and sudden fits of crying. The nervous system doesn't seem to care whether the trigger is joy or terror. It just needs an exit, and it grabs whatever's closest. But that raises a stranger question. Why laughter specifically, and not, say, screaming or fainting, like so many other cases on record? Nobody has a clean answer. Some researchers think it's cultural, that laughter was already a familiar, socially acceptable release valve in that community. So under pressure, that's the switch that flipped. Others just shrug and call it circumstantial. Science doesn't love admitting it, but sometimes the honest answer really is, we don't fully know. And Kinshasa wasn't even the first time a crowd's nervous system synced up like this. Go back to Strasbourg in 1518, and you'll find hundreds of people dancing in the streets for days on end, some reportedly until they collapsed, with no music playing and no explanation offered at the time either. Different continent, different century, same basic glitch. Put enough stressed, powerless people in close quarters, and their bodies start speaking the same involuntary language. And this isn't just an old world curiosity either. Researchers studying mass psychogenic illness point to modern clusters too. Teenagers developing sudden, unexplained tic-like movements after periods of heavy social media use during recent years, spreading through friend groups and school hallways in a pattern doctors describe as eerily familiar. Same mechanism, just a different century's stressors and a different century's contagion vector. What we do know for certain is that the Kinshasa outbreak did not quit quietly. The Kinshasa school reopened in May, and 57 more students were affected before it shut its doors again at the end of June. All told, the outbreak disrupted daily life across the region for roughly 6 months before it simply stopped, on its own, with no vaccine, no treatment, and no single moment anyone could point to as the cure. It burned itself out the way these things tend to. Once the stress feeding it eased and people stopped feeling trapped inside a situation they couldn't control. If this is exactly the kind of rabbit hole you didn't know you needed, go ahead and hit subscribe. It genuinely helps the channel more than you'd think, and there's a fresh one of these waiting every single week. So back to that laugh you swore you'd never catch. Turns out the real contagion in Kinshasa wasn't a germ at all. It was fear, dressed up as joy, spreading exactly the way real diseases do, through contact, through community, through the simple, uncomfortable fact that humans mirror each other whether they mean to or not. Which means the next time you catch yourself laughing at absolutely nothing, in a room full of people who are quietly falling apart, it might be worth asking what you're actually catching.